T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, folks. Guess what? It's a surprise episode. We're going midweek this one because there's just enough stuff to talk about right now. But this is a bit of a follow-up episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast with Luke Stevens. Came in last year, about almost to the week last year, I think, when we got to talk about what was going with Star Citizen and CitizenCon. And I figured, it's a good enough time for us to check back in, sort of have conversations over the last things that have been happening in Star Citizen. There have been some high points, there have been some low points, there's been some stuff that makes it out to the general gaming community. And I thought it might be a good time to touch up on those things. So thanks again for joining me, dude. How have you been these days?
I've been good, been busy. There's a lot of stuff going on in the industry, for better or worse. I mean, honestly. And as sort of a generalist, I get to talk about all of it. So I'm not as deep into the weeds into like one community or one big game like a Star Citizen as you would be, for example. But it's been a very good year to be a gamer. Very good year. And it seems like with Star Citizen, there's some exciting stuff happening too. And so, yeah,
there's some interesting stuff. I'm not gonna lie, man. I've not gotten to play nearly as many games as I've wanted to this year. I just picked up Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, like I just mentioned. Not the kind of game I would normally play, but I feel like you see a game enough and it doesn't, like, I'm not a fantasy gamer, or I guess kind of historical RPG gamer. But like when the mechanics and just the features are that good, it doesn't matter. And so I'm excited to play through that one. But it has been an amazing year for gaming. I think compared to, say, when was it really bad? There were some years there where it was just miserable.
There was one year, was it 2022, where there was just not really a lot, like
21 or 22, I think.
Yeah, I guess 2022 Persona 5 Royale was one of the top ones. I mean, there Paw Patrol Grand Prix that came out, so there's that.
Okay. No, I forgot that big hit.
The very well-known, highly anticipated one. I mean, there's every once in a while it feels like there's games that kind of cobbled together, and so you get like a lot of amazing stuff that lands within a few months. Like the start of this year, we had freaking KCD2 and Expedition 33, and we had Doom and Monster Hunter, and all this stuff came out right around the same period.
Yeah.
And then there's just like a break. And I think something similar is going to happen next year, where we're going to get a crap ton of launches the first 2-3 months, and then it's going to be dead for GTA, and then probably a few more at the end of the year. But it's always fascinating to me how the industry kind of comes in waves. But it's a good problem to have, because it means when we eat well. Yeah.
And it's better than when I was growing up, I feel like I always thought all the games were coming between September and December. Now it feels like any month of the year something big can be dropping any given year.
Yeah. Well, it used to be that everything was much more dependent on retail cycles. So like you didn't release in February because retail demand is rock bottom in January, February. Right. So it was like commonly known, if you released your game in January or February, it was because it was going to fail. And you just wanted an excuse to shareholders as to why it failed, because you could blame foot traffic in the stores or whatever else. But now, with everything being so digital and so online, that's not really a limitation. So it used to be February, your game would flop almost certainly. But now, some of the biggest games of the year launch in February. Whether it's Elden Ring or Monster Hunter or whatever. It's kind of crazy.
We got year-round gaming money now.
Yeah.
Good times. We're all adults now.
Our poor wallets. Yeah.
So what have you been playing lately? I know you have to cover a lot of different stuff, but like, what's your I'm having fun game at the moment?
Sure. Ghost of Yotei, I've been putting a lot of time into that. My wife also just recently got me into a game that's been around for a while, but Teamfight Tactics. It's from Riot, the same guys that do League. It's technically part of League. But she was like, she made a friend who was really into it. She started playing it, and then she was like, Luke, you need to try it too. So I started playing it, and the people who are into TFT, they get like into it, and it's all meta chasing and stuff. But it's a really straightforward, like, team building game. It's a good time. I did not think I would get hooked on a game like that, but we've been eating that up. And then there's a bunch of, other smaller stuff here and there, secret games I can't talk about. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good. What have you been playing?
Um, Besides Star Citizen, I guess. Yeah. I actually, like I said, I just started some Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Anything
Actually,
weird, anything niche that, like, because I feel kind of weird saying I play TFT. I don't know why, but it's like so not what I usually do.
the
Is there
most
something weird you've been playing?
niche game I've been playing this year is one called Citizen Sleeper. I don't think it's that niche. You might have heard of it. It's
That sounds familiar.
yeah, it's basically just like a word-based RPG, text-based, and you're sort of like
Oh,
Android kind of person on the run. I'm playing the sequel, but like the vibes are really nice. It's like I'm real into space games. That's where the whole Star Citizen thing comes from.
I'm sensing a pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so this is like not a game on like I would normally play, but it has the great music. It's got pretty good storyline. The overall system that it runs on is interesting. It's like this whole dice system, not unlike a lot of other games, I imagine. But it captured me, and so I played through like maybe half of it, 3/4 of it, and absolutely loved it. Also been playing some Alters. The Alters, I think that's a little bit better known. Yeah, that one's been amazing. So space stuff, sci-fi stuff, it's unpredictable. Okay.
But no Starfield? Why? What?
Well, you said what have I played lately?
Yeah, that's yeah. It's not as much of a living game as they would have hoped,
Yeah.
but
Look,
it's still okay.
yeah, I was a huge cheerleader for Starfield before it came out. Yeah.
And then it came out. Yeah.
Then it came out. Dude, I grew up on Mass Effect, that was like inspiring to, I think, a huge number of people who would find themselves looking at these kinds of games like Star Citizen. So when something like Starfield comes by, there's a lot of people who are playing a game like Star Citizen who are looking for a single player experience, right? That I'm not at all ignorant to the amount of people who wish that we had private servers. I personally don't like MMOs. I've never played them. I'm kind of here because, it's the whole game that's being made. But when Starfield came around, I was like, this might be what pulls me away. This might be what pulls a lot of people away because you're looking for that kind of thing. And man, it just did not come through. Like,
Yeah.
I made a video
Well, but
recently just talking. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you good.
I was going to say, I think that, just like you expressed, though, a lot of people are really interested in it. They wanted it to be great. It's just execution, whether it's with Starfield, No Man's Sky, Star Citizen, execution really matters in a sci-fi game and a space exploration game, because it's not just about vibes. It's partially vibes, but like it's also just about scope and scale and how do you represent that and keep it engaging and also make it fun, because that's the tricky thing. A realistic space game is not necessarily a fun space game, like, okay, we're going to travel to that star system over there, hold on for 30 years going at the speed of light. Wouldn't be that much fun,
Like a realistic version of The Expanse would be like you just spending half the game retro burning to slow down as you get closer to your destination. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy it's crazy that they have the technology to make these huge games for space now, but it's also crazy to think that you have to both make it feel huge because it's space and we think space is huge, because I mean it is, but then you also have to make it interesting and not like vast emptiness. But then if you put stuff in it, it feels smaller. It's the whole predicament that I think the different games are trying to solve in different ways, and that's why no one space game is ever going to really solve everybody's wants, just like no fantasy game will. There's going to be space for tons of space games from different perspectives, trying different things, because like sometimes you want to deep space explore something that's never been discovered in Elite Dangerous, and sometimes you just want to go to a pretty moon in Star Citizen.
Mm-hmm. Or I mean, one of the weird things that I like doing in Star Citizen, it's the same thing I like to do in Microsoft Flight Simulator and stuff. I just like to fly and explore, even though it's just in passing. Like you're just looking at stuff or flying through a mountain
Yeah.
scape or down in a valley or something. But there's just something in my monkey brain that just finds that relaxing and chill. And I think you bring up an important point, which is that space is so gigantic and space sim games are so ambitious and all encompassing that but also because it's impossible to make an everything game, at some point you have to start picking your battles. And I've noticed that is a consistent problem, it seems, with these like spacefaring sci-fi games, is just that they don't really know when to stop, whether it's a Starfield thing, limiting scope and scale, or it's a No Man's Sky, who bit off way more than they could chew when they launched, or Star Citizen, which has also had problems with feature creep and stuff like that.
Yeah. Space people are drawn to grandeur. So, the promises can really get you.
Yeah.
Speak from
Well,
experience.
it's exciting. It lets your imagination run when you're like, oh, so if that's possible, I wonder what else is possible. And what are they keeping secret that they know, but I don't know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about let's see. Let's jump into Star Citizen talk. You've covered it for a while. I've seen videos from you going back years about Star Citizen. When you've covered it, is it mainly an interest in the development and kind of where it's going? Is it a game that like you're really wanting to play, that you've been following because you just want to jump into it? What draws you to it?
I mean, for one, it's just a fascinating thing. Like no part of Star Citizen should be a thing. Like it really is an exception to every rule, which just makes it fascinating. Like it's a game that was kickstarted. That already makes it kind of unlikely to succeed or survive more than a few years. It also is a game that's raised an ungodly amount of money, and they're trying to do so many different things all at the same time, and they've achieved many of them. But they still have a ways to go, and so I find it fascinating on that developmental side. I like sci-fi games, I like space exploration games. It's one of the reasons I covered and talked about Starfield so much, is because I like the idea. I think that there's a way to do that where it could have worked, but due to some basic like early blunders in terms of how they designed it, I think it fell short. So I want to follow Star Citizen because I also find that interesting, and I love seeing their approach, and they make it look like a lot of other people aren't even trying with some of the stuff that they're able to pull off technically. So it's super cool. And it's just a story. As a story, it's just filled with like intrigue and drama and conflict and betrayal, and it's just a fascinating tale within gaming by itself. And so just on every face, it's captivating. It's just, I find it fascinating.
Yeah, it's it's certainly a roller coaster to follow. I mean, I don't think there's any other game I could have followed this closely for this long and not gotten completely burnt out. So,
they keep it exciting.
Yeah. I'll give you that. Do you play it pretty regularly? You mentioned beforehand that you kind of jump in every once in a while.
Yeah, basically, a lot of it is, for me, it's primarily like a social game. I know some people play it, a lot solo, or they'll go into an org, and they'll work in that sort of broader team context. But for me, primarily, it's like getting on with some people I know, and we go and just kind of mess around. Like we don't do anything too sorted. We just kind of explore, talk, hang out, do stupid stuff. Like the example I brought up a bunch is one day we did it on stream and started playing, and we did a whole ship kind of fashion show where everybody came and show and tell their ships and everything. It was kind of cool. And one of the other people that was playing with us kind of accidentally, maybe not so much accidental, killed another player. So we took his body in the cargo hold of a ship, went up into the atmosphere, and had a whole space funeral for him and stuff like that. That's just emergent, silly, stupid stuff. But that's where I've had a lot of fun. And I know a lot of other people, they grind out mining missions, or they'll go and, they really get into the role play side of it. And anytime I've sat down to try and get into that, I have bad luck with finding bugs or issues that prevent me from doing that.
When you start taking it seriously.
Yeah, the moment I try, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna get in deep. It's like the game's like, maybe later. But and I think that that's something that's happened with a lot of people, at least that I've seen in my comment section and community. A lot of people who are like, I bought the $45 pack. I've played it for a handful of hours, but I like what they're doing, but I'm gonna wait to really get into it until it's done or not having server wipes happen, at least not as often, and stuff like that. And so there's a lot of people who have dipped their toes in the pool. Mm-hmm. Are like, ooh, I like this. I'm not jumping in yet, but soon. And then years and years go by, and then you end up on a podcast talking about it. But yeah. I think, I'm definitely one of those people that I dip my toes in, but I wouldn't say that I've ever jumped fully in.
Right. Do you think that that seems to imply that there's a lot of people who are okay with everything surrounding the project. They just want an actual good game to play. Do you think that's the kind of sentiment that would be more common if the game was better? Or do you think that the, what's the word I'm thinking of? Reputation, I guess, that the game has in terms of the store and the funding and everything like that is still enough to keep like a sizable amount of people away, even if the game ends up being good?
I mean, in my circles and audience, Star Citizen has a very meme worthy, or even at times like just, I don't know what else to compare it to other than like a lol cow. Like it's just a disaster zone. And that's what a lot of casual gamers view it as, where they're like, oh, it's still not done. Oh, it's raised $880 million and it's still not done. And they still have bugs. And oh, I see the news story. Man, you guys have seen it. Every time there's a news story that breaks into the mainstream, it's usually a bad one. It's usually they broke all this stuff, and so that's what typically is exposed to the casual audience, is just the bad stuff. Mm-hmm. And they don't truly appreciate all the crazy stuff that has been accomplished and achieved. And that's something I've tried to do on stream, is like show the Star Engine demo, which was basically one gigantic middle finger to like, it felt like Starfield at the time, where it was just like all that stuff that they have to have load screens for, we do it seamlessly. Check it out. Yeah. It was really cool. And so I think that there's a lot of stuff that's going on that prevents people from breaking into it, like you alluded to. But I think that's just the difficulty, maybe not problem, but the difficulty for Star Citizen is that the persistent universe side of it is not structured in a typical game format or way, not even compared to like MMOs more broadly. It's certainly not set up like a lot of single player games. It's its own thing. And that's what some people love about it, but it also makes it inherently difficult to understand from the outside. It's that people are like, well, so what's the leveling, look like? What's the like, where's the storyline? Where's the quest line? What are the main characters or NPCs? And like, it's harder to understand for a more casual gamer who maybe is using Mass Effect as a point of reference or something. Right. They're trying to compare it to that to understand what it is. And that's why I think Squadron 42 could do a lot to kind of introduce people to Star Citizen in a more traditional game format, at least as I understand it. But I definitely think that there's a lot of moving parts that act sort of as barriers to entry for people.
Yeah. I mean, and really just the way the conversation generally goes, you never get to the point where you're talking about the game itself. Usually it's either the time it's taken, the money it's taken, kind of some drama that the company has caused. But a lot of times the conversation tends to stop there rather than moving towards maybe some of the more confusing parts of the game that are going on. For yourself personally, is what you've seen so far and like what you've been following, what you like from the game, is that enough for you to want to go and play it when it supposedly reaches 1.0? If they're continuing with what they're doing for funding?
Um, I mean, it's a good question. I think how they currently fund the game, I view to be a pretty significant problem for the more not, well, I guess maybe not casual, but the not hardcore fan base or player base. Because even if it's not strictly pay to win, I think it can be described as pay to excel. And that for a lot of people is just a turnoff. That's something they don't want to mess with. That's something that they are not okay with, and they don't want to get super into something if they think that it's potentially going to just lead to them not having as good of a time as the people who have a lot of money. Because that's a component of the pay to win, pay to excel stuff, is that it's not just that it's more fun if you spend money, it's that people have like an inherent envy or jealousy. And when they see somebody fly by in a ship that they know cost $1,000 or $500 or $200, whatever it is, there's just an inherent screw you vibe that goes on in the back of their head, you know?
Right.
And that's just, you don't want people even beginning to feel that way when you're playing a game like that. Or maybe you do, and that's how you get them to buy it, but it doesn't feel good. And, so I think the monetization is something that they need to address. I don't know if it's going to be sustainable in terms of the business model if they cut that stuff. That's something that they know about, I'm sure. But I do think that there's a real question that they're wrestling with right now as to whether when they hit 1.0, there's going to be a lot of people coming in. Like, are people not getting in now purely because it's unfinished, or is it that they're not getting in because of the monetization scheme and the bad reputation the game has among the casual crowd? I mean, we've all heard it 1,000 times. You say the term Star Citizen in a video or a stream, and you get scam citizen. You mean scam citizen? Ha 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 ha! Like you've never heard that before.
Yeah.
And that's what the meme is. That's the vibe that people have just in passing. And I think, you know, it's something I hope that they've wrestled with. But I personally suspect that if it hit 1.0 tomorrow out of nowhere, I don't think there would be a big influx of players. I really don't. I think
Because of the perception.
they have to do something to win people over and to buck the perception everybody has right now, which is that either it's a scam and or it's pay to win, which is not technically true, but that's what people perceive the reality of Star Citizen being. And so that's kind of the reality that they have to deal with, because if they want people to get in and spend money, they have to overcome that.
When it comes to paying for the ships, I definitely hear what you're saying. Like, people will see a ship, they'll see something nice, they'll see a skin that they know is exclusive, and they'll be like, you bought that, screw you. It's natural. It's the way of things. Do you think then that, like, even if they stopped the ship sales, because at this point you can't really tell the difference between a ship somebody bought and earned in game, so if they've already sold ships now, can they get away from that problem at that point if people feel some kind of animosity towards the possibility that cash was used to buy a ship?
I think all of this comes down to communication, because like I think if there's some sort of backdoor way of spending money and getting the ship exclusively, I don't think that will functionally or mechanically affect most people's time in the game. Most people wouldn't be exposed to that. I think the problem is, again, you're trying to get people in the door, and people aren't coming in the door because they have this perception that the game is pay to win, or the game is only for whales willing to spend tons of money. So I think it's not just a matter of stopping the sale of ships, and maybe going to just cosmetics and just things that look really cool, or maybe it's based on a subscription every month to keep the servers running, something like that. There's lots of MMOs that operate that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the key is going to be, how do you communicate to the masses that it's not the way it used to be, that it's not just a game for whales, it's not just a game for this. Because that's been the difficulty when I'm on stream talking about Star Citizen, is that we'll have fans of Star Citizen come and chat. A couple of our mods are hardcore players, and they say, no, it's not pay to win, you don't have to spend a lot of money to have fun. Then somebody in chat goes, okay, so how much money have you spent? And they go, well, I've spent a couple thousand, but it's like I didn't have to. It's like, but that's what people are pointing to, you know.
But like, yeah, you'll run into people who have spent a lot of money, but it's not even an exaggeration. The amount of money, the amount of time you need And you know this, you play the game. You need like a couple hours to earn the amount of credits to rent a
Mhm.
ship that's going to make you a ton of money. Um, and there are
Well, I
reasons
think
why
that
that's.
that's.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think that that is a key component that the probably 99% of people are just not aware of.
Yeah.
Like they don't know that no, like you can rent the ships, so you don't have to pay for it, or you can grind out for however long and get the in-game
Buy it in
money
game. Yeah.
and buy the ship. It will be wiped if they do a server wipe, and you'll start over because you didn't pay for it with real money, you paid for it with in-game money. Um, but I think that that's one of the problems with messaging in a situation like this is that we just had to spend like 30 seconds explaining no, you can rent it to fly the ship even if you didn't buy it,
Right.
and if you buy it with money you grinded for in game, that will eventually, it can be wiped and taken away from you, but then you can just regrind it, you don't have to spend any money. But already, like, a lot of people are tuning that out already because again,
Yeah.
the perception that people are starting with is it's a game for whales and people who are going to spend a lot of money. And I just think like Star Citizen is such a cool and technologically advanced game. If you can even really call it a game, I mean, it's in some ways it's way bigger than just a game. That I want them to find some level of mass market success to be sustainable for another 15 years and go even crazier. I mean, imagine if they keep at the pace of kind of tech innovation that they've struck. Imagine where they'd be in 10 years. I mean, imagine what it's going to look like. It's going to be insane.
Yeah.
But pretty clearly, money is the primary issue, and money is the thing they have to solve. And the alarm bell I've been trying to ring for a year and a half, 2 years, is that there is a mass market casual gamer problem within, like, as it pertains to Star Citizen, which is just that there are ways to have fun without spending money. The average consumer doesn't know about it, doesn't seem to care because they just hand wave it away and go, yeah, but you're still selling multi-$100 ships.
Yeah.
Yes, but you can still, it's still marketed towards whales. And that's why it's not just going to be a matter of if they care, maybe they don't care, but if they want to break into that mainstream in that same way, that makes, doubles the player base, triples the player base, they've got to not just address the monetization stuff, but they have to find a way to communicate the changes and the balance to a new audience, which is, I think, going to be trickier because right now the memes are overwhelming.
They are, but I think they're making some good progress. Right now it's still very much in like the Star Citizen bubble, but I think a lot of people who have previously felt like the project was rudderless, and just sort of treading water, myself myself included. I'm included in this. Feel like there's starting to be more direction, and they are making more changes towards not just actually a game environment, but like messaging on the same front that they're developing. So they've always had this thing of they wanted to push features and focus on the tech and experimenting, but then also they were trying to invite people in just to play casually. And it never really made sense because the game wasn't functioning for casual players. But this year, they've started to drop content that like normal people would just kind of want to try, just to try out a game, a little FPS combat, maybe some ship combat, something that you can earn from doing those things. And then they've also started to add trailers that reflect that rather than just being trailers that are like feature lists and stuff. So I think they're starting to learn and move more in that direction. They also, last month canceled, or not canceled, but like basically stated they're not going to do any more concept ship sales, which from an outside perspective, it's kind of like, well, okay, yeah. But for people following Star Citizen, it's a contrast to what they've been comfortable with over time. So I think that they're starting to move in that direction. It might be too slow. It might be too late, but I don't think they're ignorant of it.
Yeah, well, and even just something as seemingly also, like you said, like with like instancing, which is something they were just talking about at CitizenCon. That's something that's like a age-old feature in any sort of online game is that you have it instanced, and there's all sorts of benefits for that. Like even just in the most simple way, it makes it so you can like set the game down, go do something else, and reload into that instance later or a day or a few days later, and you can do missions that are now like multi-hours long, and you could even have it broken up into kind of sub chapters within the mission, so you can go on something more expansive with your friends. And it's that sort of like gamifying that I think is going to make it more understandable, because I think it's kind of like what you were just saying. Like, they had the concepts of the game and versions of the game that you could play, but unless you were probably more hardcore, it wasn't very approachable. It wasn't easy to grasp. And I think it goes back to what we were saying at the top, which is that the casual gamer who has a lot of money, and there's a lot of them that could bankroll Star Citizen's development for the next 20 years, they look through everything through the lens of familiarity and other games they've played. They're looking at Star Citizen and trying to understand it in the context of a Starfield, a No Man's Sky, an Elite Dangerous, Mass Effect. Like, they're trying to figure out what percentage is this Mass Effect, what percentage of this is like Starfield, what percentage of this, like, that's just how they're kind of sorting through it.
Yeah.
And I think thus far, like, Star Citizen has not done a great job of explaining in an easy to understand way to those people what it is. And that's why I think Squadron 42 is going to really, really help, because they'll have an example that you can play and be like, yeah, you thought that was super cool how you went from the planet's surface out into space and then back down to another spot on the planet. Yeah, we have that, but with so much more. And you can do it with your friends. Like, I think that's going to do so much. And I think that's why they're putting so much money and effort into it. But that's my biggest frustration with Star Citizen, is that I think they just have done a poor job of explaining what it even is. And so many of their reputational issues are because of that miscommunication. And I think they've been able to get away with it for a long time because they haven't really needed the casual side of the gamer base, or the mass market, maybe is a better way of saying it. But they're reaching the point where they're going to need to pierce that veil. And my point has just been that you can't do it in the traditional way or the way you've been doing it. You have to do something new.
I think it's kind of funny to think if Squadron 42 had come out as they expected in 2016, how screwed Star Citizen would be in the long term, because they would have missed that entire hype cycle. Like, Star Citizen would have been nowhere near ready, right? Now they're at this place where Squadron 42 is finally at least expected to come out. And at that time, hypothetically, Star Citizen is performing a lot better and actually at a point where it can even think about attracting casual players. So, I mean, they didn't even have an inventory system until like 2021, I think.
Yeah.
They didn't have in-game rewards until this year. It's just, it wasn't even the right time. So it's really funny to look at how badly timed everything was, but how it ended up kind of coming back together to hopefully work out for them. I am curious, though, from the point you were saying about people who might look at the planet or the space to planet transitions and think that's really cool and want to spend the money on cosmetics and things like that. If Squadron 2 is a success and is bringing in success level monies, and they are transitioning more to cosmetics and maybe like using their optional sub for more funding, do you think that financially they have a future?
I think it would look. I mean, maybe the question to inform my answer would be, because you're more in tune with it, do you think the average Star Citizen consumer right now that's like maybe accustomed to spending money on chips or just plays the game a lot and grinds out the in-game currency and stuff, do you think that they would be open to a flat subscription model or something similar to a lot of other MMOs, where it's like, yeah, you want to play Star Citizen Persistent Universe, it's $25 a month. It's
No, I don't think
whatever.
so. I mean, I know I certainly wouldn't, and I don't speak for everyone, but I think a big part of why people have been so okay with this funding model is because they've expected that there wouldn't be a requirement of subscription or something like that afterward. They wouldn't expect to have to pay money for additional star systems and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's also kind of, it's hard to explain to people that haven't tried Star Citizen, but it's like, yes, the game is primarily funded by whales who are spending the vast majority of money, even though they're 0.1% of the player base. They spend, 90% of the revenue. But the benefit of that is that you can have crazy high prices on some stuff, and either orgs will pool money to get it, or it's individuals buying it for them and their friends or whatever. But the nice thing is that means the people that are not the whales get to play this crazy ambitious game, and they don't have to spend at least anywhere near the amount of money that the whales are spending. But when you try to level it out, so you introduce a flat fee for everybody, then the people that weren't spending any money are disproportionately affected. For the whales, they're probably like, I'm saving money. This is great. But for the people that weren't spending tons of money, they end up very dissatisfied. I think the difficulty is that something like Star Citizen is going to be, it already is, but it's going to continue to be extremely expensive to operate and maintain, especially with how much they've grown, how many devs they have, how many studios they have. The server infrastructure alone is crazy. So it's going to require a lot of money, and gamifying it to the point where you have like battle passes and stuff. I don't personally foresee them doing that. I mean, maybe they're going to do something like that. But I'd be surprised if they have the the Star Citizen season 35 battle pass.
Like, stop. You give me foot cramps.
Yeah, I know, right? Can you imagine? I personally hope that doesn't happen. But I think that that's the discussions they're having internally is, do we say, screw it, just keep the paid big ships. We let the whales fund it kind of proudly. And it just is what it is. And we try to attract casual gamers just on the merits of what the game is. And we try to communicate, no, you can rent ships. You don't have to buy that. Like we have that discussion we kind of had earlier. Or do they try to adjust it, cut out the big ticket items, which are very meme worthy, and that a lot of people will just roll their eyes at and not bother looking at the game again over. And then they try to find some alternative funding model. Maybe it's not that they even require a subscription model. Maybe it's all paid cosmetics and stuff like that. And if you want the premium experience, kind of like Fallout 76, you can pay $100 a year, $10 a month, whatever it is, for, I don't know what they would do. Like, you get your own private planet.
Oh, dude, no,
I don't know.
they'll
Like, whatever.
probably have some. I think they'll probably have some benefits when it comes to like insurance or something like that, or the taxes you
Oh,
pay
yeah,
for
that's
your base security. They could do some things like, and they have the optional subscription already. I think people get cosmetics every month when they have that, and like a couple other things. So like I could see them bolstering that a little bit. I can't
Yeah.
say I'd be super happy with it, but they gotta fund it.
Well, I think that's just it's the tricky bit, because everybody that's in the game right now is used to it as it's been for a decade, and so the idea of changing it is, I'm sure, very jarring. But I think it all just goes off of the premise of, if it hit 1.0 tomorrow, would a bunch of players flock in? Even if they did a bunch of trailers, they do a trailer at the Game Awards trying to pierce into the mainstream. Like, would it be successful? And my personal opinion, being fairly in tune with the mainstream of gaming, is that it wouldn't magically change much of anything, because the one of the worst things you can have, other than just being a bad game, one of the worst things for your game, especially if it's a live service where you need players and friend groups joining, the worst thing for you is if a game is considered uncool. And the danger for Star Citizen is that in the mass market, it's just Scam Citizen. Like, people don't even start to listen to the pitch of why it's cool. They just dismiss it.
But then that's where Squadron comes in, like you were saying.
Mhm.
That could change everything in terms of the perception of the project.
Yeah, if they nail Star Citizen, or if they nail Squadron 42, especially with like the big name actors and actresses they have, and it really is, I don't know how big they expect it to be, but like if it's 20, 30, 40 hours of just crazy high production value, wild spacefaring craziness, that could be the best advertisement for Star Citizen, especially because they could introduce all sorts of extra stuff where it's like, press this button right now to download and load into that. I mean, I'm not expecting them or saying that they'll have a console version or something, but I think that people would get really interested, and it could garner some real, or drive some real interest. But they have to nail it. And that's the thing, is that there's expectations and standards, whether it's performance wise, that is present now in the more mass market. You release a game that stutters as much as Star Citizen did for me yesterday, it's not going to go over well. I mean, we've seen games that run pretty well that that get to the point where they might flop because of a few viral tweets showcasing the frame drops that they have. Like,
Yep. It's gotta be
unfortunately, it's
good
that
launch.
temperamental.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. There's a lot more, I think, riding on Squadron 42 now than I think there would have been back in 2018, 2019 if they had been launching Star Citizen.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think it's the difficulty that I'm sure they're wrestling with is just that every year that it goes by, the standards are raised and the expectations are raised, and so like the motion capture you did back in 2017 or 16, whatever it was, sure it was cutting edge at the time. Is it cutting edge today? I honestly don't know, but I would expect maybe not. And that's part of the problem with like games that are stuck in development for so long is that you're fighting an uphill battle. But
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's a lot's riding on it. A lot is riding on it.
There's it's a lot of the conversation around this game comes back to how long it's been in development and obviously how much money it's taken. Two top topics by far. But considering how long it has taken, as you were saying before, they're running the servers, doing all like the business building and stuff. Considering that there probably has been a bit of mismanagement here and things have been rebooted or restarted throughout this process, is 800 million in your opinion actually as bad as people treat it?
I would say for what they've done and the number of devs and the amount of time, 800 million is about right. Like people joke that it's a money laundering scheme or something. As far as I can tell, no. If they had raised 800 million and 3 years had gone by and they had nothing to show for it, then I'd be like, yeah, red flags are going up. But right now, like they've been working on this for over a decade. They have, I don't even know how many devs, but they have multiple studios around the world. They've done engine rebuilding. They have software engineers that are extremely talented and some of the world-class engineers and programmers. It's like the stuff they're doing is world-class. So to me, the money doesn't seem outrageous for how much time has gone on and all of that. But should it have taken this long? That's a separate question. I mean, you know, I think feature creep is certainly something I would have been like, I think Star Citizen could have avoided a lot of the public perception issues they currently have if they had launched in like 2016, 17 with way less features, and they did the No Man's Sky approach of slowly, incrementally doing expansions that add stuff. I mean, No Man's Sky has demonstrated that you can do that. The difference is, of course, I don't think No Man's Sky has generated anywhere near the ungodly amount of money that Star Citizen has. It's a much smaller team, and they've done it very incrementally. And at this point, I mean, Star Citizen, clearly something's been working because they've raised close to $1 billion, but it's certainly taken them way longer than I think a lot of other companies would have taken. And it's the danger with this just more generally. A commenter brought up something really interesting on a video I did once, where they were like, they've created a system wherein they are incentivized to never finish Star Citizen, because if they finish Star Citizen, the money will stop rolling in as much, especially if they decide that they need to stop doing the big ticket paid items, which clearly are generating a ton of money for them. So they have a reason to just never finish it and to just keep adding features and keep adding little stuff, and it'll get better and better. The game will be more and more impressive, more features, crazier tech, but it'll never actually hit 1.0 because then they'd have to find some way of turning it into a more standard product, and that's when the money will dry up. Unless it's like one of the biggest games of the year and it sells $1 billion worth of copies, which is technically possible if you pierce that mainstream veil. It's not going to happen with the hardcore guys, though. And that's just where they're at.
I feel like that train of thought, I don't know if it really pans out, because every time a game comes out, they're like, the amount of people who are interested, even you say it, how many people are not following Star Citizen right now because they know it's not released, and you know that they would probably be paying more attention by then. I think the folks who say things like that assume that CIG is not going to sell anything. Maybe that's what they're assuming. I don't think they'll ever stop selling spaceships. I just think they'll stop selling any that are... Okay, let me rephrase that. I hope that they stop selling any that are too egregious. most of the ships that people are buying for themselves, besides like, people who collect them as like a hobby, they're usually buying something they can fly by themselves or with a couple of friends. Those ships are less than $200. If they were to come out and say, "Hey, we're going to stop all sales of anything that's $200, or over $200 rather," I don't think most people would have a problem with that. And I genuinely think if they reached 1.0 quality and we're still doing stuff like that, combined with the cosmetics and the optional sub stuff like that, I don't think it is a definitive that they're going to make less. I mean, they'll probably make less. I don't think it's a definitive that they're not going to have a better time. Like, it'd be nicer to finish your engine, get your game to 1.0, downsize a little bit so you don't have to pay as high an employee count, and focus on just incrementally improving it with 1.0, because people pay attention to 1.0 games. People like Satisfactory had a really big boost when it went from early access to 1.0, but people were playing it already like it was 1.0. And I think just reaching that milestone is a pretty big part of making a difference. I'm not saying they're going to be successful, but I think the idea that they would put off reaching 1.0 just because it would make them more money, kind of ignores word of mouth.
No, I think that's totally fair to bring up. I think it certainly is very cynical to be like, yeah, they're never gonna finish it because they just want the shit money. It's certainly like the most cynical viewpoint to have. My personal perspective is I think that they are. It also that cynical view assumes a sort of linear trajectory or a flat line of demand when it comes to the big ticket ship purchases and the engagement there, which I think you can't assume. I think the evidence I've seen over the last few years and the financial filings and everything else is that the revenue is starting to taper, or the demand is starting to taper a tad. And so they are still raising tons of money, but it's not at the rate it was a handful of years ago. It's slowing a bit. And that doesn't mean that they're going to go belly up, overnight or anything, but it means that they have to start thinking, because every executive needs to think 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ahead. And if you're starting to see demand for those big ticket items taper, you have to assume it's going to, like, you have to plan for that to continue.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're planning for Squadron 42. That's going to be the big ticket marketing thing, the push that they need, hopefully coinciding with 1.0. And I do think you're right. 1.0 does carry a lot of word of mouth. And the other countering point to all of this is that, yes, Star Citizen has sort of a meme-worthy reputation within the casual gaming side of the internet, but there are plenty of MMOs with very, very aggressive monetization. Maybe not selling, $500, $600, $700 ships or something, but some of these like gacha games, they're extracting thousands of dollars out of people through what I would consider to be a more unethical or slimy way, where it's like taking advantage of gambling addictions. At least Star Citizen, you know what you're buying, at least
don't get started about Wicklow.
Like, you buy the thing, you get the thing. That's not true of a lot of these other games.
Yeah.
But like, there are ways to fund crazy high production value games through different monetization techniques. And I'm sure internally they're talking about all of it. Like, the one way to make more money than Star Citizen currently is apparently gacha stuff. Gacha mechanics make ungodly amounts of money. And they also, for whatever reason, are more socially acceptable, apparently. Like, there's lots of games with gacha systems that are mainstream and nobody really bats an eye at. Whether it's like Genshin Impact does it, all of those Hoyoverse games do it. And those games are massive, crazy high player bases, and they make more money than the Catholic Church, and they're just fine. They don't get any of the flack that Star Citizen seemingly gets. So maybe that's the key. Maybe
that's what Star Citizen has to
go. Gotcha.
I think the timeline has really helped Star Citizen with just being able to be persistent on people's minds when it comes to that stuff. I mean, I see the game get compared to the day before. Was it the day before or the day after? Day before, right?
I blocked it out of my memory. I think day before, yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I'm like, okay, guys, I know that I know that Star Citizen has a reputation, but like you can at least load it. It's like
Yeah.
this was literally
No,
not a game.
Well, and that's the thing is it's like people throw scam citizen around. It is objectively not a scam. Like I said, when you buy the crazy expensive ships, with like except for concept ships and things like that, you know what you're getting. You buy the ship, you get the ship. A lot of people are buying the ship only after they've rented it a bunch or flown in their buddies. It's literally not a scam. It is not technically vaporware either, even though that's a term that gets thrown around a lot and is like one of the memes, because like you can literally play it. It's not like they took the money and ran. But that's part of it, is because it's also been around so long. These memes and ideas around the game have built up. And that's my broader point with all of this, is that if they want to shake those perceptions and stereotypes, they have to have a very clear, I think, marketing plan. They have to have a clear push into the mainstream with like mainstream creators. I'm talking like, if you want to break into the mainstream, you're going to have to go to the Game Awards. You're going to have to go to Summer Games Fest with Jeff Keighley. You're going to have to go.
Gonna have to become friends with Jeff.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get friendly with Jeff, and like that's just what you're gonna have to do, and you're gonna have to get mainstream outlets to cover the game in a non-toxic way, which is gonna be difficult because, yeah, well, and part of it is that the reason those headlines still are being made is because that's what people are finding compelling. That's what people know
it's
Star Citizen for. So it's easy clicks, and you have to get to the point where people aren't clicking on that. They're clicking on, look at the crazy new tech, the Genesis system they built for Star Citizen. Look at this crazy thing they're doing. Like, you have to change the narrative and shift the narrative. And they have the tools, I think, to do it. Because some of the stuff, again, if BGS had the Star Engine demo and they announced that and showed that as like an advertisement for Starfield, the internet would melt.
Yeah.
It would go crazy.
That would be crazy.
And but they haven't managed to. I mean, it did very well. The video did well, and I talked about it on stream. People thought it was impressive, but they've got to get better at changing the message and the narrative from scam citizen, from this or that, and focus on the amazingly cool stuff. And unfortunately, right now, the one consistent but that comes up, it's like, yeah, that's cool, but expensive ships, but they charge for this, but pay to win, but pay to excel. And that's why I'm like, if you just shed that, you just go, okay, yeah, it's gone. That's no longer a thing. We got rid of it. Now look at this amazing thing. Yeah. Then the narrative changes, and it's only the crazy cool stuff that they spent the 800 million on. And I think that works way, way better in terms of piercing that mainstream veil, which I think they're just getting to the point where they kind of need to.
Yeah, I think, and like I said, they're doing like the no concept ship stuff feels like a very strong reaction towards doing that. The way that they're marketing this stuff this year feels like a strong reaction to that. In fact, you were saying that the funding is kind of tapering off. Have you seen what they've been pulling in this year?
Not the most recent stuff. Did they issue the most recent?
No.
Whatever they call it.
You can hold on. There's a website that actually tracks it all basically in real time. I'm gonna send you.
Send it to me.
Yeah, I'll send you the chart. It kind of shows everything up until current day, and it shows there how it compares to last year. And it does it by month, so you can kind of see like what month is representing sort of what it was the previous couple of years. I guess let me see if I could put this onto the podcast itself for you guys. Oh Jesus, no, not that. Let me drag it out here.
November goes hard, man. Look at that. November goes hard.
There we go. So for anybody who's watching, you guys can see the same picture I'm kind of just dragging out here. It's ugly, but it works. So you could see like 2024 definitely was a taper from 23. And all of that, I think, was kind of in 2020, they had like the big pandemic boost like everyone else. In 2022, they reached a new level of persistence, I think, and YouTubers were picking it up, different folks, yourself included, were giving it a little bit more attention mainstream. But this year is almost 50% ahead of last year. And it's also the first year they've ever turned away from focusing on features and started to push like quests and missions and narratives and storylines and like real stuff, real game stuff. There's a whole debate right now about whether that's the right direction or not, of course, but the prevailing realization is that like there are plenty of people who are going to spend money on things in this game if the game is running better. And this feels like the first year that they finally kind of proved that. So I don't think
there's also an element of added confidence, because one of the things with consumer spending is that you want, like, they'll buy it if they're confident in what they're getting. And I think one of the narratives, at least like 2023, 2024, is like the consistent, they're never going to finish it, they're just taking the money run, vaporware, all of that. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was towards the end of 2024 that they shook up some of the leadership, didn't they? And they like put some new people in charge, specifically with the goal of getting it across the finish line and like hitting release targets and stuff.
Yeah, over the course really of that whole year, there were a few shakeups in the C-suite and like some of the higher ups at the company. And I think that's another just important thing that people could know when they start to learn about Star Citizen, if you can ever get past the scam citizen discussions, is like, yes, this company has struggled with things. And I think over the last few years, you can see very clearly that they're trying to do things to fix those struggles, and they're having effects that are both positive and negative in different ways, but they're definitely changing. And I think better than anything for a company that is or is not struggling is to actively seem like they're putting in some real changes. We see so many game publishers, EA, Ubisoft, Microsoft, all these big companies that'll just make terrible decision after terrible decision every year, and nobody really gets in trouble. I'm not saying people at CIG deserve to get in trouble or if that's why they left or anything like that. Just the idea that like it's sometimes really hard to see noticeable change in a company after they've received some criticism. And I think CIG has actually shown some real change over the last year.
Yeah, I mean, and this is fascinating to me because like the last numbers I had seen were 2024, and like that was the discussion after 2024 coming off of 22 and 23, is that we were experiencing this taper in spending and demand. And so it's fascinating to see that it's at this point 46% ahead of the previous year's spend, which is wild to see. But I think it maybe there's many different ways, I'm sure, that you could interpret it. I'm sure they have more complex data that's able to tell them more. But I hope that this means that at the very least, there's less desperation at play, because a company that's desperate makes really sudden, sharp decisions. We saw it with Ubisoft over the last like 18 months after Star Wars Outlaws, primarily, where they just started acting like totally crazy, trying anything and everything.
Yep.
And, you don't tend to make rational decisions when you're panicking. And so if this gives them extra cash to like actually finish Squadron 42 to the extent it needs to be finished, polish the ever living hell out of it, that could really, really help. Because I mean, again, just going back to what we said earlier, to me, I think they do have a game plan that could, in theory, work, which is Squadron 42 comes out, is really good, reviews well, because more casual gamers care about that. It's super polished, all that. It's just like a solid 9 out of 10. That's what you should hope for. And then that funnels people into Star Citizen, which hopefully at the time is also pretty polished, hits 1.0, is ready to receive those players in. Hopefully they've done things to build out monetization schemes that are not gameplay affecting. So like a lot of cosmetics, a lot of things like that, whether it's trinkets on guns or just armor sets, whatever it may be. And then at the very least, restricting the extensive spending on ships and stuff. Like you said, toning it back to individual ships. The most like hilarious thing they could do is go to a gacha system for certain ships. At least, like, can you even imagine how much money they'd make? I don't think they should do that, to be very clear. I think that they should just tone it back. In my ideal world, they do not charge money for ships. It's just in game. They only charge for cosmetics. But I can understand why they may feel the need to still do that. But I think that they have a game plan that could work. And hopefully they don't go gotcha. But I think they have a game plan that could work It just requires them to nail 1.0 and to nail Squadron 42
Yep.
and actually finish them. I mean,
Yep.
that's the obvious thing. And they just have to
100%.
do that.
Yeah. I don't know. The interesting thing about this is like we're talking about this from kind of like the monetization perspective, but then there's this whole gameplay perspective. It's funny that people who consider Star Citizen from the outside probably think that anybody who plays the game is just some amorphous blob of all the same thoughts that praise the game and think it does no wrong. But the freaking debates around gameplay systems in this game get so heated and they're so long term. And so it's funny to have this discussion, and we're kind of flirting about the topic of mainstream viability for this game when a lot of people would hate if this went mainstream. You know, a lot of people are like, you're bringing in, you're supporting controllers with the interface, and you're working on making it so consequences aren't so bad. These are the things that we loved about this game. And that's just a whole nother discussion. Do you think they should be trying to target a mainstream audience, or should they try and figure it, like, should they risk having to still sell ships if it helps them remain independent of like more mainstream influences?
My stance has been in an ideal world, you cater to everybody. So you have hardcore servers, which retain the hardcore vibe and the OG feeling. And then you have more approachable servers. And this is something like, even to a weird extent, you could even compare it to like Fortnite has no build mode versus build mode. If you're a sweaty tryhard, like you can go that route. And so there's different options and places for people to go. And the tough thing is building all of the components that then you use in different modes or servers or whatever. But I think that would be the easy way to deal with it, because transparently, there will be a lot of people who would love a Star Citizen if it played in a more familiar way with like a more standard, typical, objective system or whatever else. I'm not saying everything needs to be set up with like a quest log or whatever. There's plenty of survival games or even like a No Man's Sky that doesn't work in that typical way. That's much more open-ended. So yeah, I'm not saying you would have to do that, but I think that if you can gamify things in a more familiar way to the casual audience, that would make it approachable. Controller support certainly would make it very approachable to a lot of people. I'm a mouse and keyboard player myself, but I've seen that lots of people will not touch it unless it's controller based or whatever else.
Mouse and keyboard makes me feel so stupid sometimes, man. Like I can't control my pinky in the correct way to crouch when I need to crouch. I'll just reload there's like, I don't know what I've been playing recently, but there's a game I've been playing where I think it's like the jump button is next to the reload button or something. And so I'm so used to hitting the reload button, but I keep hitting the jump button. I'm a controller lover, so you'll see me cheering that on. Yeah.
And I mean, inevitably, no matter what they do, there's often a conflation. It happens in all games, but there's a conflation between streamlining and stupefying. Like, they're not the same thing. You can streamline something while retaining complexity and nuance, but you can also stupefy it to the point where you removed any sort of complexity at all. I mean, the example I give in videos and streams is like Fallout 4's dialogue, where they removed all consequence. There's basically 3 different ways of saying yes and then a no. Like, they removed all variability in dialogue, and it also simplified it at the same time. But it simplified and stupefied it. But there's other things where it's like, if you add loadouts to a game like Elden Ring, does that stupefy it? No, I think that actually streamlines a component of the game with swapping out materials and armor sets and weapons and things, but makes it just one button press instead of 50 different inputs and rearranging stuff. So there's ways to streamline things that make the game better that is not removing complexity.
Right.
And I would hope that by adding like full controller support or making it more approachable to people wouldn't necessarily stupefy it, would retain some of the complexity, but that's why it's difficult.
Let's say something like, how about reputation? There's a system of reputation that they want to have in the game where you have the different factions, and if you come across, this is like not a crazy idea. This is in Kingdom Come Deliverance too. You do something to anger a faction who owns an outpost or a space station or something, and then because of that, because you've done so much of that, they don't let you land at the space station. That kind of thing is the sort of thing that they're kind of starting to talk about scaling back. They say it's because of technicalities, but they also seem to hint at the possibility that they don't want people to randomly come across consequences like that when they don't expect it and they feel like they're blocked out of certain types of gameplay because everyone should be able to access that stuff. What about something like that?
I tend to take the position that I think gamers are a lot smarter than a lot of studios give them credit for. There's inevitably going to be people that demand yellow paint for everything. Like they're out there, they're going to whine and complain no matter what. Unfortunately, for those of us that like more difficult or complex stuff, I mean, I think that there's a lot of those people out there, and they can be very vocal. But I think, some of these more hardcore games, whether it be like the earlier example of Elden Ring, which has lots of complexity and doesn't particularly explain much, I think something like that is a great example of a game that shows if you expect and demand a lot of your players, or KCD2 as well, you demand a lot of your players, a lot of them will just rise to the occasion and they'll be stronger for it and they'll thank you for it. And so I'm of the mind that a hardcore reputation system, if implemented in a reasonable way where like players understand I can't land there because of that thing I did. Okay. Now moving forward, my behavior will change and I will not be a murder hobo because of that choice that I made. I think that that's totally fine. I think that can lead to more compelling and interesting experiences in gameplay and exploration. It's just a lot of the time that stuff comes down to communication. Like if a player runs into that space station and can't land and they get pissed off because they're like, I don't know, is it bugged? What's going on? That's a problem. But if you can communicate like through dialogue, or you get hailed and the guy on the intercom says, you're not permitted to land here after you committed blah 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 offense at this space station, or you shot down our ship, or whatever it is, so that the player understands why they're being punished in that way. I think that that's a cool moment. But I tend to think that gamers are a lot smarter than a lot of devs seem to think they are.
And maybe that's the problem they're running into, is this has all been the game is not working how it's supposed to, so people have feedback that's based around a game that's not finished, and then they kind of assume players play a certain way because they don't get it. But it's like, well, you don't have the tutorials, you don't have any of the stuff that actually teaches people. I hope they don't fall into that trap with more and more things.
It's a huge problem with games that are really buggy, or studios that are known for bugs, where you can't tell if it's a bug or a feature. And that's a big problem. If you're doing something, you're like, am I not able to land here because they tracked something really complex and thought about this and I'm being punished? Or is it just bugged? I don't know. Like that's not a great thing to feel. Because players need confidence in the game they're playing. And if bugs are a consistent issue, then it kind of undermines the momentum or credibility that any sort of event has in a game.
I'm very used to that. I wanna wrap up the discussion a little bit with just some last talk kind of about the big picture look of this game's viability. We've mostly been talking about like monetization and perception and stuff. I'm really curious from your perspective of this project and how it's gone. Do you think that the gaming industry at large is watching this closely? Do you think that the success or failure of Star Citizen and Squadron 42 will have an impact on how people approach the industry or other projects?
As of right now, would I say they're watching closely? No. I make a video on Star Citizen about once a year, maybe twice a year if there's some big topic. And the videos have done pretty well, so people are interested, but I think they're interested in passing when there's some big ticket item. And unfortunately, I tend to make my videos on big topics that I find compelling. Like the last one, I think it did over 1 million views.
It did.
I should probably know, but It did well, but it was mainly on like the blades and this idea of selling like a gameplay affecting thing, a pay to win mechanic,
Yeah.
basically.
Do you
And so
think,
people see that.
sorry, if do you think if you had made a video about like, I don't know, a new gameplay mechanic that came out, do you think it would have done anywhere near as well as that one?
No, I think we did segments, for example, on the Star Engine demo, which I think is just about one of the most impressive tech demos of anything I've seen in recent memory. And that, I mean, those clips are like, they do fine. You know, they
Mhm.
might do 50 to 100,000 or something. But a lot of it is like the rule of YouTube and online content creation is intrigue, don't deceive. Like it's all about intriguing. And if you deceive people through like clickbait and stuff, they'll stop watching you eventually and they'll move on. But the key operative idea is that you have to intrigue people through a thumbnail, a title, whatever. And the thing is, like, people have passing familiarity with Star Citizen in the context of Scam Citizen, in the context of they've raised $800 million. So if if the video is framed as Star Citizen just made an amazing technical achievement, or look at Star Citizen blows Starfield out of the water, however you would frame it, people go, yeah, it probably does. It better for 800 million. Like they're not that intrigued because they already kind of have come to the conclusion. Yeah, yep. But they're very intrigued at the idea that Star Citizen finally crossed the line after raising $800 million. You know, they overstepped. Finally, their own fans are upset. Like, that's intriguing. What did they do that was so bad that now even their own fans are upset?
Yeah.
And I think that that's just, you know, when there's something bad, the bad thing will always, maybe not always, almost always be more interesting and intriguing than some of the good stuff that's also going on. And that's why I've said, just cut off this rotten branch on the tree so the rest of it can be really healthy. Like the excessively monetized ships is just such an albatross around their neck that I understand it's there. It's funding amazing profits and returns, quite clearly. But like at some point, if you want to change the narrative, they'll have to do something about it. And maybe they don't need to change the narrative. Clearly, I mean, they're 46% ahead of target for this year. But yeah, I think those videos, a video just talking about like the positives would never do as well as the video on the negative, because the negative is known.
Yeah.
It's
expected.
already going viral and it's expected, and it's something that's easy to understand.
Yeah. Do you think, well, do you like, I guess it's a weird question, but are you, when you make a video like that, that's covering the drama of Star Citizen, do you wish it was actually just about good stuff, Star Citizen wise? Like, do you want to cover Star Citizen in that way? Or are you just kind of interested in whatever the commentary is at the moment?
No, 1,000%. Like in those videos, and I challenge, you know, anybody who's big into Star Citizen to go and watch them and judge for themselves. But in those videos, I try to showcase all the also incredible stuff that they've achieved with the game. Like I think in that most recent video, I even showcased some of the Star Engine demo. We've shown that on stream. Like I'm not one of these guys that's just ranting and raving about Scam Citizen. I've stressed that it's not a scam. It's not vaporware. It doesn't fit those definitions. And you know, some people click on those videos and they're kind of surprised that it's not just that, because that's what you typically get in one of those Star Citizen videos. Yeah. But I would love to be able to discuss Star Citizen purely in a mechanical way, just in terms of the gameplay. But unfortunately, it's, like I said, got this big albatross around its neck.
Yeah.
That if you make a Star Citizen video for the mainstream that doesn't discuss the crazy amount of money they've made while still not releasing the game, people are going to feel deceived when your job is to intrigue, not deceive. And so,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to continue vamping. That's just my career.
I was just going to say you almost get called a shill if you don't like put down a disclaimer or something like that. No, I think that of everybody I've seen cover Star Citizen who isn't like making multiple videos about it a month or every so often, uh, you do the best in YouTube that I've seen of having intriguing takes on it that inform, but also like give it credit where it's due and kind of let people see both the positives and the negatives. Because gosh, there are some not great takes I've seen. I've seen
Oh,
some videos that literally show a picture of a ship and be like, "You can't get this in game," and then it's like people are flying that in the game.
yeah. Where'd you get the screenshot?
Yeah, it's
Well, I
rough.
appreciate that, and I mean, I think it's ultimately the truth is always stranger than fiction. The truth is also usually, almost always, more captivating than any falsity that you could draw up. And I find the story of Star Citizen so fascinating because it is filled with these kinds of contradictions of amazing amounts of money raised and also amazing accomplishments, but also some profound shortcomings and um, some poor judgment and scope and feature creep and things. And I think that contrast and that dynamic is what makes it really compelling and interesting. And my hope has been for a long time that they can figure it out. And because I mean, seriously, so much of what they're doing in Star Citizen really is remarkable. It's just that the mass market not just is not aware of it, but they almost are uninterested because of the albatross that they can't look past.
Yeah.
And it's just my fear ultimately is that all of these amazing accomplishments and technological achievements and stuff will be for naught because they're going to get to a point where they kind of are running out of money for whatever reason, or they've grown to the point where they can't keep funding it with the amount of money they're bringing in, and it'll never get finished and it'll never get the recognition or attention that it deserves, because what they've done is really incredible. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
all of those things that like No Man's Sky and Starfield and all these games promised for years and years and fell short of, they're able, or at least they appear to be on track to achieve a lot of that stuff. They just have to get this one major component fixed, and I just don't know if they're going to. But all I can do is vocalize my perspective and try, as you mentioned, try to inform people. And I've had it suggested to me that my videos, though critical of major components of Star Citizen, have also driven a good amount of attention to the game. And who knows, maybe they've
That's
made some
how it
money off
works,
of it as
man.
well.
That's how it works. Even like that whole saying that all press is good press. I'm sure a ton of the random articles that have like headlines that are inflammatory are still bringing people to the game. Its visibility is the key. It's the king.
Yeah.
I like what you said about like No Man's Sky. I think that it was interesting to see the reception of No Man's Sky getting like ship interiors and multiplayer on ship gameplay that for a lot of people represented them stepping past Starfield, but for Star Citizen players was like it was like them being that snooty Android fan that had a feature come to iPhone a few years later and you're like, yeah, welcome to the party. And like, yeah, Star Citizen's not finished, but it does show that the features they're hitting are things that people find impressive. It's just not packaged like how they want.
Yeah, it's not packaged and it's not been communicated well to people, which is also an Android problem where it's like, yeah, you've got all this crazy stuff. You know, the second that like Apple unveils a folding phone, people are going to be like, wow, that's groundbreaking. And it's like Android's had
They
that
did
for a
it.
while. But apparently you didn't know about it or you didn't care or it wasn't made cool or whatever it is. Like you said, it wasn't packaged properly. But that's also a component of this is just, yeah, the internet popped off when they saw that No Man's Sky had added all of this stuff that Star Citizen has had for a while. But every year that goes by, more and more games are adding features that are very impressive that like Star Citizen is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the day will come, almost certainly, when like there's nothing that novel in Star Citizen anymore. and they're gonna hopefully have released by then. But every year that goes by, the competitors are adding more and more features and doing more and more crazy stuff,
Yeah.
and that diminishes that lead that they have. So they just
They're getting
gotta.
there. They're
All this
getting
to
there.
say, they gotta finish it.
Yeah, yeah.
They gotta do it.
It's like a race. Every year I'm told that somebody's going to surpass Star Citizen, and they don't. But also every year Star Citizen doesn't get finished. So it's like, what's going to come first? Who's going to make it?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I will have you know, I do believe that the blades, which were the thing you kind of covered in the big video you did, and a lot of other people in Star Citizen made a fuss about, seem to have been taken off of the store since then and not reappeared, which was not even what they had said in their whole apology spiel after that. I may be wrong, but I can't find them at all. But I do know they're still in game. So I don't know if it's the case, but I am hopeful that like they had a real chance to sit back and think about what they were doing there. I hope it's not like we'll just sit back and wait for it to calm down and then we'll put it on there at some point. I'm hoping that that was like enough noise to kind of make them recalibrate on that, because most people agree. Well, I can't say most people agree. A lot of people I know agree that like when you start giving components, the insides of the ships on the store, that's diminishing in progression. And you can only do that so much before the game starts losing its meaning.
yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And it was ultimately the goal of the video was to get a lot of eyeballs and to kind of get the attention of some of those people. And I know some of the people that work at the studio follow my socials, and I'm sure keep tabs, once a year when I make the video to see what's going on. But the ultimate goal of my video, and I'm sure a lot of other people's videos, was to make a fuss about it and to vocally oppose it so that hopefully it's not something that they do, because I didn't hear a lot of compelling arguments for it other than it makes them more money. I heard plenty of very compelling, in my view, arguments for why it was a slippery slope that shouldn't be tolerated. So I'm glad to hear that they seemingly have at least taken that feedback to heart.
Yeah. All right, man. I think that about wraps up the talk. We could just keep going and going, but I'm not going to take up your whole day talking about this space game. We will we'll reconvene at another point when this day next year. we'll be back and talk. No, but thank you for joining me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's always a pleasure and a joy. I definitely want to get you on stream or something. We can talk about some of the actual features and stuff that they're doing that are genuinely really, really cool.
Yeah. I'd love to jump in game with you.
Component of this.
I'd love to jump in game at some point too. Cool. That'd be sick.
Yeah. No, you can carry me. That'd be awesome.
My friends will carry me carrying you. That's how.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, see? It's a collaborative thing. It's a community.
Yeah. It's the friends you made along the way. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. But no, a pleasure as always.
Yeah. You want to let the good folks, the good viewers and listeners know where they can find some more of your content?
Yeah, it's just, my name is Luke Stevens, as you can see on the screen. I have technically 3 channels. We do Luke Stevens, which is just kind of like the main big channel for big videos. Luke Stevens Live, which is where I stream, and we have all the stream segments and clips and stuff over there. And then I have Luke Stevens Clips, which is for smaller stuff that doesn't really fit elsewhere. It tends to also be a place where we can talk about things that are not strictly gaming, like we might talk about the Witcher TV show and things like that on that channel. So just look up my name and you'll find me, and we can hang out and talk about games. It's great.
Easy as that. YouTube over here, just like forcing you to make multiple channels because you can't. If you put something that's not exactly what YouTube thinks you're going to be putting, all hell breaks loose.
Yep. It's all about format. I tell people, I was like, if you make big videos, keep those videos on one channel. If you make little videos, put those on a separate one. It's weird, but that's how YouTube does it now.
Yeah.
It's just how it works.
All right, man. Thanks again for joining me. I look forward to our next talk. I hope you've hopefully learned something a little new today. I definitely learned more from you in terms of your perspective and like the more casual audience perspective. Always a joy to have you on though. And yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, appreciate you.
And everybody else, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, you know what to do. possibly comment about how crazy we are and how bad our opinions are. Or you can maybe subscribe if you want to hear more bad opinions. That's always fun. You can catch us on audio platforms if you hate our pretty little faces, Apple, Spotify, wherever it is you like to catch a podcast. And or you could just stick on YouTube because, that's where it's all at. Either way, thanks for joining, folks. I'll see you all next week.